Amado Fuentes Carrillo was a Mexican drug lord and leader of the infamous Juárez Cartel. He was one of the most notorious drug lords that ever existed. Amado's personal fortune, which was estimated to be in the billions of dollars, as well as his powerful connections within law enforcement and other government agencies, made him become popularly regarded as the most powerful drug dealer in Mexico during the 90s. On December 17, 1956, Amado Fuentes Carrillo was born in a small town in Sinaloa, Mexico. He had 11 siblings and a powerful drug lord as an uncle. His uncle Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, who was also known by the alias Don Neto, was one of the founders and leaders of the powerful drug syndicate, known as the Guadalajara Cartel. It was in this cartel, under the mentorship of his uncle Ernesto, that Amado Fuentes Carrillo became exposed to life in a drug cartel. His involvement in drug dealing began, and eventually, he introduced some of his brothers into the business. As a member of his uncle's cartel, Carrillo was sent to Ojinaga, Chihuahua State, and was given the duty of overseeing the cocaine shipments of the cartel. While in Ojinaga, Carrillo learnt about border operations under the tutelage of Pablo Acosta Villarreal, who was also known as El Zorro de Ojinaga, the Ojinaga Fox. At that time, Pablo Acosta Villarreal was the leader of the Juárez Cartel. In 1987, Pablo Acosta was killed, and his role as leader of the Juárez Cartel was filled by his right-hand man Rafael Aguilar Guajardo. Rafael made Carrillo his second in command. Carrillo worked under Rafael for some years, helping to push the Juárez Cartel forward. However, in 1993, Carrillo seized control of the cartel. He shot Rafael Aguilar Guajardo, his friend and boss, killing him. This murder, carried out by Carrillo, set off what is described as the city's worst ongoing bout of criminal violence. After killing Rafael, Amado began to build his drug smuggling empire. The Juárez Cartel was formerly heavily involved in smuggling marijuana and heroin, with cocaine taking up a small part of their operation. However, Carrillo later turned his focus to smuggling just cocaine. During his time as leader of the Juárez Cartel, Carrillo was heavily involved in the use of high-tech surveillance equipment to spy on other cartels and their leaders. Carrillo knew how to fly planes and applied his knowledge of aviation and flight routes into the expansion of his drug trade. He was the first drug lord to use private planes to transport his illegal goods through the skies. This revolutionized the entire drug smuggling business and earned him the nickname El Señor de los Cielos, which translates to the Lord of the Skies. The Juárez Cartel leader owned an impressive fleet of private planes, including more than 30 Boeing 727s. To pay for this fleet, Carrillo set up an extensive money laundering operation in Colombia. During his career, he worked with some of the biggest names in the illegal drug trade, including Pablo Escobar and Joaquin Guzman Loera, who is more commonly known by the alias El Chapo. Amado also worked with the Beltran Leyva cartel and the Arellano Felix brothers of the Tijuana cartel. However, Amado was very unlike most other drug barons, including the ones he worked with. From the beginning of his career and throughout his years in the drug business, Amado Fuentes Carrillo kept a very low profile. He didn't get involved in wild, high-profile shootouts. Neither was he much of an extravagant partier. He carried out his drug trade with the calm professionalism and efficiency of a businessman. Very few pictures of him appeared on television or in newspapers. The United States Drug Enforcement Administration described him as a kingpin who was from a new breed. His low profile kept him safe and rescued him from potentially fatal situations. Earlier on in his career, while his boss and mentor Pablo Acosta Villarreal was still alive, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration released a document that listed over 200 members of Acosta's organization. Yet, because of his low profile, Amado's name was not on the list, even though he held a central position in the organization. At another time, the Arellano Felix brothers, who were the heads of the Tijuana cartel, ordered a hit on Amado. However, he survived the assassination attempt because the assassins were working from an old picture and they shot the wrong man, who happened to be in the same restaurant as Amado. However, it would be a mistake to think that his low profile and businessman-like approach to his illegal trade made him any less ruthless as a kingpin. Amado was known, by those who were familiar with him, for his ruthlessness. He had a no-nonsense outlook when it came to his business, which can be clearly seen in his murder of Rafael Aguilar Guajardo, who was his boss and friend. He had no tolerance for snitches and would order the murder of anyone who seemed to be hindering the progress of his organization. By some accounts, he ordered more than 400 people killed. Amado's empire grew quickly and he made huge amounts of money on a weekly basis. The immense success of his drug operation was due in part to his innovative use of technology to spy on rivals and to transport his drugs through the sky. However, a major contribution to his success was the protection he received from corrupt officials in key positions in the Mexican government. Out of the huge profits his business made, Amado gave out an estimated $500 million per year as protection bribes. This, along with his ruthless dealings with snitches and rivals, kept him on top of the drug game. At the peak of his career, his net worth was estimated to be $25 billion, easily making him one of the richest drug lords to ever live. He had real estate property all across Mexico, the most popular of which was his mansion, which was nicknamed the Palace of 1001 Nights because of its Middle Eastern-inspired architecture. The massive estate was state-of-the-art during its time, and it is still present today even though various Mexican politicians have demanded that the mansion be torn down. Unfortunately, the growth of his empire came with its disadvantages. As the leader of such a large organization, it was impossible for him to maintain his characteristic low profile. He had gotten too big and inevitably, he appeared on the radar of United States law enforcement and Mexican anti-drug forces. There was increasing pressure on Carrillo from the United States and Mexican government who kept making several attempts to arrest him. One day, during his sister's wedding at their family ranch, Mexican law enforcement agents made one of their attempts to capture Amado Fuentes Carrillo. They barged into the wedding festivities to carry out their mission, but the raid was unsuccessful. Carrillo had been tipped off by a corrupt law enforcement official, and ran away just before the soldiers and police arrived. That was how he barely managed to escape getting arrested. As pressure continued to mount, the infrastructure of his business started to weaken. It was difficult for his trade to continue as usual when the focus of two different governments was placed on him. According to some accounts, Carrillo hardly ever saw his wife and children as he had to be almost constantly on the run. Reportedly, he made frequent trips abroad to places like Turkey, Russia, Ecuador, Argentina, Chile, Cuba, and Costa Rica. Amado owned a house just 3 blocks away from the residence of a prominent Mexican government official, a governor named Jorge Carrillo Olea. Jorge had come under pressure for his complacency concerning drug trafficking and related violence. Residents assumed that Jorge was involved with Amado to an extent. After silent protests against the governor and constantly mounting pressure, he finally resigned, after which he was arrested. This increased the pressure on Amado Fuentes Carrillo and convinced him to take drastic measures. So, in a final attempt to escape the authorities for good, Amado Carrillo decided to undergo an extensive and complicated plastic surgery procedure which included liposuction. His aim was to change his appearance drastically, to avoid being detected by the United States and Mexican authorities. The surgery occurred on the 4th of July 1997 at Santa Monica Hospital in Mexico City. He checked into the hospital under a false name, and as he underwent the surgical procedure, 2 of his bodyguards were in the operating room with him. Unfortunately for him, the operation ended up being the cause of his death. There is very little paperwork regarding his death, but he is said to have died of complications that were caused either by a malfunctioning respirator, or by a certain mixture of medications. There were allegations that the physicians involved in the surgery had intentionally killed the drug baron by giving him a mixture of drugs that was against medical practice. Whether these allegations were true or not, members of the Juárez Cartel didn't take the death of their leader lightly. The body of plastic surgeon Jamie Godoy Singh, who was in charge of Amado's operation, was found stuffed into an oil drum and covered in cement. The oil drum containing his body was found along with 2 other oil drums containing the bodies of 2 other people, who are believed to have assisted Jamie in the plastic surgery procedure carried out on Amado. These oil drums were found on a highway that connects Mexico City to Acapulco. Signs of torture were evident on the bodies. According to the police, the bodies were handcuffed and blindfolded. They had been strangled, their fingernails had been pulled out, and their bodies were beaten and covered with burns. Amado Fuentes Carrillo was given a lavish public funeral that has been described as one of the most extravagant and expensive funerals that Mexico has ever seen. The funeral was held in Sinaloa and lasted for days, during which thousands of people were in attendance to pay their respects to the drug lord. After his death, the authorities seized several real estate properties including warehouses that they assumed were used by the Juárez Cartel to store drugs and weapons. Officials also froze Carrillo's bank accounts worth a total of over $10 billion. Despite the seeming revenge killing of the physicians that had botched the surgery and the lavish funeral that was held in the memory, there are still some speculations that the billionaire drug lord is still alive. Some of these rumors were sparked by Amado's cousin, Sergio Carrillo, who said that Amado was fine. In his words, Amado is fine, he is alive. He had surgery and also had surgery practiced on some poor unfortunate person to make everybody else believe it was him. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration has refuted these rumors, comparing them to the claims that Elvis Presley is still alive. Possibly in an attempt to quell the rumors, the authorities released a graphic video of what was supposedly Carrillo's corpse. However, the face of the corpse was badly damaged and difficult to identify. This further fueled the rumors. Some of the conspiracy theories insist that one of Amado's henchmen was made to look more like his boss and then killed. Weeks before his death, Amado had paid a visit to Cuba where he stayed for about 3 weeks. He was welcomed as a guest of the Cuban government, which at that time had no idea who he was. Amado had used a fake passport, and the Cuban government believed that he was just a rich businessman who wanted to invest in their country. According to Mexican law enforcement agents, travel records show that Carrillo had made frequent trips to Cuba in the last 3 years before his death. He allegedly had a second family there, a woman named Marta, and her 2-year-old daughter. There were speculations that he planned to move there in an attempt to escape capture. This information led many to believe that he is currently living a life of luxury in Cuba with his other family. Meanwhile, some others believe that he is acting as an informant to American drug officials. Whether or not the rumors of Amado Fuentes Carrillo being alive are true, we may never know. What we do know is that he is off the radar of the authorities and new leadership has taken over the Juárez Cartel. Don't forget to like this video and share it, so you don't miss out on new videos. Hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications. Until next time.